let's go ahead and jump into 8.0 and have a look at what's new. Our software is driven entirely by the feedback that we get. So when we look at the last release, 7.9, and the new features that were added then around hardware asset management, that really was driven by the requests that we have gotten over the last few years as we transitioned from primarily a concurrent use license manager into a larger software asset management system, and then have expanded into the IT asset management space with hardware lifecycle management. This year, we're continuing on that. That's what we have gotten from our customers, is various requests on how we can improve the UI to better serve the workflow of lifecycle management for hardware. So kind of like last year, we're going to expand on that IT asset management functionality this year. And as far as what I'm going to show you today, there's a few UI changes, and then one big new feature around hardware replacement that I'm going to dive deeper into toward the end of the call here. So for the little things that I think make a big difference, the first one that we're going to talk about is the ability to customize the columns here on the computers page, as well as devices and purchases. In 7.9, the columns visible here were locked, and you had the ability to expand individual records to look at the details, and you could decide which of the details you wanted to display when you expanded a record. And so this customization down here only changed what you saw when you opened up the dropdown. It's the same UI here in the settings, but now whatever I do on this left side in terms of dragging columns over and arranging them will affect the actual columns visible at the top of the page. That's huge because it does two additional things. One, you can sort by columns that you previously couldn't even see on this page. And then secondly, you can also search by anything that's visible. So if you want to drop your asset ID or some other field here that might be relevant to your role or your workflow, you can do that now and then use the search bar to actually search that column as well. So that's a big one. And again, that's going to apply to the main computers page here, as well as devices and purchases, as well as models, which is a new page that relates to the hardware replacement. And I'll get into that as well toward the end. Another thing that you can do that is new. So previously, if you were using purchase records for your hardware purchases, you could create the purchase record in the web, but there wasn't an easy way to link a large volume of computer records or device records to their corresponding purchase in the web UI. So you could create the purchase record and you could go one by one into the computers, but you couldn't link them. So the web UI now has, when you right click on a selection of computers and go into quick edit, one of the available fields here is now purchase. And when you go and select that purchase field as the field you want to edit, you can search for a PO number and select it. And then when I apply this, that will establish the link between the individual hardware records selected and that purchase record. So you can do that now in the web. Another thing that is new related to purchases, if we go to the purchase page itself, is we've got the purchase type up here. Previously, you were able to organize computers or group them based on various fields, and then similar to the computers page, you could decide which columns were visible when you expanded, but you didn't have a way to just say, all I want to see is my hardware record or purchases. So now with the categories listed here, you can do that. Another thing that you can also see on the purchases page is that there are filters as well as tags. So you can filter the page and create either one-time filters or custom saved filters that you can use on this page as well. Another thing that is new, I'm going to come back to the computers page, although this applies to purchases and devices as well. And that is, after I have used one of the navigation items on the left side here to filter this view, whether it's divisions, folders in the case of purchases, or filters or tags. Sometimes you might have a need to export the filtered view. And that was another thing that was fairly easy to do in Key Configure, but we didn't have in the web. You could export reports, but the actual primary windows here, where you filter and look at the different computer purchase and device records, you couldn't export a filtered view. Under the three-dot menu at the top here now, though, you do have the ability to select a file format and export just the visible items. So you can see a lot of these features are features that they're new to the web, but have been in Key Configure. And one of the things that we've been working on, and probably the biggest thing about this new release, other than the hardware refresh extra, is geared around bringing the web UI into parity with Key Configure. And in my opinion, personally, I think that this is the release where I say if you're an admin that's been holding on to Key Configure as your primary UI because you're just familiar with it and it's easy to do, it's probably time to at least get familiar enough with the web UI that when you go to do something, you're familiar enough to know which way to go. There are a few things left in Key Configure, whether it's related to policies or product management, creating URL-based products that are still either only Key Configure or a little easier there. There's some dynamic drag and drop type functionality that may never make its way fully into the web, although you can do some of that here now as well if I wanted to drag computers to a division. That is something that I could technically do. For the most part, not only has the web UI come pretty close to parity, but there's a lot of things you can only do in the web UI now, such as this grouping, the ability to choose virtually any field in the computer's database and filter the computer's page. Also, the devices, purchases, and models page in a similar way can be grouped based on, like I said, virtually any type of or any group, or any field. So that's something that's absolutely web UI only. And then I'm sure you're aware there's a number of what we call extras. One of them, I'm going to show you the hardware replacement extra that are only in the web UI. So if you're still kind of holding out, I've used Key Configure for 10 years and I haven't really touched the web UI, now's the time to kind of get familiar with that. It's not going anywhere. We're not gearing up to dump Key Configure. It will always be there as far as I have been told, as far as I know. But most of the new functionality seems to be web UI focused. So another thing that is in the web that was previously not, if we go into individual computer records, you will see that we can now actually see the encryption status, secure boot, and TPM status of those computers. You can technically go into edit mode and change these manually if you want, but the reason for them is because the client discovers that, and so you can see the setting based on what the client discovers. You might have a reason to change this if you're doing imported records that don't have our client installed yet, and you want to make sure everything's accurate. But for the most part, you don't need to edit these manually. The client's going to discover that information for you. So this history page, from the date a computer record is first created all the way through its life cycle, is going to record all of the changes that occur to that record, whether it has to do with hardware configuration details that you find on the information page, any of the asset fields that you find on the asset tab here, including the life cycle stage. Those changes are going to show up here. If they're made by the client discovering those changes on the endpoint, then this by column will be blank. but any changes that are made manually by an administrator are going to be listed here. And this relates to some new reports that are now available. So on a computer by computer basis, this history page has been here for a while. In 8.0, we have a new report, or a few new reports. So if you go to the report builder and just type history, see there's some new reports here. The history dump one is probably the most, well, in my opinion, it's the one I'm going to show you. It's the one I think is the coolest, in that it will allow you to get a very similar view to what we saw on that history page for individual computers, but this is done for multiple computers at once on a group level. So it's very, very similar in presentation, but you can see that multiple computers in this case, this Adams Lab 1 division, have been added, or we're running this on multiple computers at once. And it's still organized by default chronologically. So this is a chronological view of all the changes made to all the computers in the Adams Lab 1 division, which I think is really pretty cool. And of course, just like in the history page for the individual computers, you can search within the report here, and it will filter the view within the report to just the records that match your search query. And then just like any other report, you also have the ability to export. So this is something that I think will be cool, kind of extending that history functionality out to allow you to run it on many computers at once. The other big thing before we get into this hardware replacement functionality, the other big thing that used to be key configure only is importing in the web UI. So whether that is computer records, purchase records, or the device records, or even, as I've mentioned a number of times, models, which I'll show you next. The ability to import is going to be in this top right corner. Actually, I've got to go back to the computers page. And in the top right corner here, you'll see there is the option to import computers now. It functions just like it does in Key Configure if you've ever done that before. I've got a CSV file somewhere here with some computer records. I'm not going to run through the full process, but I want to show you the basics. If I drag this CSV file right into the field here, then it opens up this window down below where I see the columns from the CSV and the database columns. Anything that matches perfectly is going to automatically match up. Anything else, I can open up the drop down and find the relevant field here to map it to. So this would be the name field. I can grab that. And I can build out this map, and I only ever have to do it once for a given data source because I can then save this. So I can, if I've got any previously created field maps, I can select it, and you can see I don't have to go through the process of manually mapping anything I've previously set that up for. But to create a new one, you just click this Save button, and you can give it a name, type of description if you want, and that will save the field map so that the next time you import from the same data source, you can just select the map and you don't have to go through this process. When you're ready, you click the import button, and I'll go ahead and do that. It imported all 4 of those computer records right in. So if you haven't used the import in Key Configure, but you're interested in being able to import, whether it's computers, devices, or purchases, that process is pretty straightforward. One other thing here on the computers page before we go into hardware replacement, when we have these groupings set up, before you had to, if you wanted to select everything within a group, you had to select the top one, scroll down to the bottom, and hold shift to select the bottom one. Now, each of these individual groups, you can click on the count at the top, and it will select all within that group. So whether that's to run quick edit or run a script on that group, being able to get a quick selection, especially when it's a long list, 100, 200 computers that you're grabbing all at once, it's a lot easier to just click the button and make the selection that way. Okay, I think that covers the UI changes of features from Key Configured that have come into the web and other new functionality around the web UI. So let's talk about the big one, which is the hardware replacement extra and the process of a hardware refresh within the web UI. So to get this started, let's just sort of set the stage. I am, in this case, a hardware asset manager, and I know that I've got a hardware refresh due in one of these computer locations. So I'm going to select no filter, and I'm just going to grab Adams Lab 1. So these are the computers in this group. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of grouping because it's not really relevant to what I'm doing. And I can see I've already, prior to the call, added a few additional columns here just so you could see them and know that they're there. And forgive some of this dummy data that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is demo server, none of this is real. But if I know that I'm due for hardware replacement for a certain lab, or if I need to kind of get it set up, Quick Edit can be helpful to kind of set the stage for some of this. Individual computer records on the Purchase tab have a lot of these relevant fields. And related to hardware replacement, there is a script that will allow you to set the replacement date. I'm going to take a quick detour. I forgot about this. It's been there for a little while, but most people probably don't know it's there. This set replacement date script, just to kind of set the stage a little bit here, will allow you to automatically populate your replacement date based on a number of options. So first of all, are you going to set it relative to a specific date you define right here? Are you going to set it relative to a pre-populated purchase date or warranty date? Or are you going to set it relative to today? And then you tell it how, what you want it to calculate against. So if it's 24 months after the warranty date, for example, I can set this up, and that will allow me to automatically populate that replacement date for any and all computers within the environment, either by selecting them and running it on a selection or by running it across the board on all computers at once. And then this can actually be set to run on a schedule. So as new computers come in, and say the Dell warranty script runs and pulls back the warranty date one night, then maybe the next night the replacement date script will run and populate that replacement date the next day. So once you get that sort of thing set up, there's two other things to be aware of as we go into the way this functionality works. And that is the replacement cost field versus a replacement model. So a replacement cost is a static number that you can drop into that field just like any other data point on a record. And if you use that, then the hardware replacement extra will use the replacement cost and the replacement date when it projects out costs. If you link it to a model, which I'll show you now, the model itself is going to have a cost associated with it, and it will use that cost. So little bit of setting the stage there, and now let's talk about the actual workflow. I'm going to take you to models in just a second, but I want to show you what the replacement extra looks like, just to get a quick idea. So this is a multi-step process, and this is page 1. It can be organized by division, department, who the manager is, or by the current computer model. You can organize it by years, quarters, or months. This other selection allows you to choose between cost only, counts only, or it will add the computer count there as well. I prefer kind of just the cost view. So this is where we're headed. Before we go there any further in this process, one of the real kind of cool things about this is So I've got a group of computers that I need to replace. And those might be all identical computers in a computer lab, or it might be a department of individuals who don't necessarily all need exactly the same computer. So this process is going to help you make some of those decisions. And I'll show you if it's a one-by-one decision or if it's a group decision, how you might use the tool to identify and manage it. But the first step is either to import through a spreadsheet or to create your computer models. And you can have as many of them as you want, and they can be organized or built out however you want. The idea here is that this is a computer type. This isn't a specific machine with a serial number. It is a model of computer that has certain attributes that is available as an option to choose from when you're figuring out what kind of hardware to replace your current models with for that process. So I can, on a one-by-one basis, create these models, give it a name and a model type. I'm gonna skip this and just show you what they look like. If I were to do that, it would open up this page, which I could then go in and populate additional details. So a quick look at the fields that are here. Probably the most important one, other than the model name and some of the configuration details, is the cost. And then once the model itself is created, it's then available as an option when it comes time to actually make a selection for what you're going to replace your current computers with. And that linking of a current computer with a model, there's a couple of ways of doing that. First of all, I could do it right from the computers page using Quick Edit. If I go in, make a selection, choose Quick Edit, replacement model is one of the fields here, and I could create that link, click Apply, and it would apply that to this selection of computers. If I'm going into the hardware replacement extra, the way you can look at this is, of course, I've got my computer groups over here, and then I've got the projected time periods. In this case, they're quarterly. And this is based on the replacement date. So let's just look at Q2 2024 for Adams Lab 1. If I click on this cell, it's going to open up that computer list. To kind of explain this page, we've got the current model column here. So this is the individual computer record. I could click here to go into the details if there was anything I needed to edit or add. I can see the current model and then the date. And you see the asterisk here is telling me that it's based on a specific replacement date in this case. That means in this specific computer, I've got a specific replacement date set using this replacement date field. But if this field was empty, it will attempt to use other fields and it will tell you what it's using. So maybe the warranty date field might be chosen instead. It's obviously preferable to have a specific replacement date set for each computer that it can use, but it does allow for a couple of other options automatically if that field is not populated. So on the replacement side, these computers have been linked to this Dell Latitude 24 model version. And I showed you one way you might do that back on the computers page. The same approach will work here. I'm going to turn off expanded view just so I can see the complete list and select everything. I can right click and quick edit is available here as well. And so from here, and this is a different quick edit. So these selected fields are a different set than the ones that we saw back on the computers page. These are persistent. So whatever I select here will stay here, and it's a different set. So replacement model is here. So I'm going to go back and actually, one of these computers is different than the others. So I'm going to select this. The replacement cost field, I'm not going to populate. I'm going to actually remove it because the model itself has a cost associated with it. I'll apply that again. It'll change that one at the top. Go back in. And so here's this list of current computers, the model that's going to be replacing them. that top one must have a replacement cost, a specific replacement cost set, and it does. So the difference between this one and the rest of these, I guess if a specific replacement cost is set in the computer record, then it will use that, even if a model is selected. So what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate, is go in and actually remove this specific replacement cost and save that, so that when I come back and refresh this page, now it's going to use the model replacement cost. So this is step 2 in the process. I can go through either as a group or one at a time and select a replacement model for the individual computers right here. One thing I'll explain now, just so I don't forget, is this base model field. This is the model of this current computer. So we have a model name field that the client gathers from the operating system of the endpoint and populates automatically. But this model name is being gathered from the client. The purchase base model is the model if you have created one of the current computer. So if you go to use this process for the first time, you're probably not going to use the base model for your current computers that you have today, because this is a brand new feature and it's not already populated. But what's cool is when you actually step through this process and the replacement computer, the replacement model becomes a real computer that has now replaced an old one, you set the replacement model of the new physical computer to that base model, and that gives you a record of what you started from, the model that you originally purchased. So over the years of that computer's life cycle, if you add RAM or make some other configuration changes that show up on the history page, you'll always be able to see what it originally was, because it's linked back to that original model. So that's what the base model is. It's for the new computer when it comes in to be linked back to the model that it was associated with. And then we've got the cost. And then the status you see is essentially what we expect, or the way this is intended to be used is you'll come back to it through the process. So I'm not going to choose Adams Lab 1, do everything today, and the replacement is done and complete necessarily today. When I go in, this status allows multiple people to be involved. So hypothetically, if I'm the administrator placing the order for the new computers, but I'm asking a lab manager or even a faculty member or a staff member to log into this system and make a selection, just as an example, they can come in, make that selection, and then the status field can be used as a way for me to decide yes or no on whether I've accepted that or need further changes. And that's here, is where I would make that change. So what is this page? So I got there from here by clicking on an individual computer. Now, I previously have made my model selection. I've done my cost projection. I know what's going on here. Maybe I've downloaded and done some analysis of the cost with the CSV export. And now the new computers have come in. I've got the actual hardware in stock, and I want to step through the process of swapping out the old computer with the new computer in the system here. I can do some of this in bulk if it's a lab and everything's the same using Quick Edit, just like before. I could come in here, grab whatever fields I want to do, whether it's the division or the department or the manager. One way in bulk, I could use Quick Edit. But in those cases, or really even in those cases where it's in bulk, there are some aspects of replacing a computer that are one by one. And so what this is designed to allow you to do is, column on the left is the current model and the column on the right is the replacement model. So currently I haven't really done anything because All I've done is linked the current model with the model that it's going to be replaced with. But now the new computer has come in, or I've received that Dell asset report and I've imported it, and I know the serial number, and I've got the specific hardware decided. This computer is replacing that computer. I can come in here, and this search is going to do a couple of things. If there's any current or if there's any computer records in the system that match this model, it will provide them in a list here that I could choose from. Or I could type or paste in a serial number. And when I select a computer, I'm selecting a specific computer that is the replacement for the current computer. Some additional options open up that allow me to, this one happens to be empty, these fields, but it would allow me either one by one to populate the data from the old computer into the relevant fields for the new computer, automatically change the life cycle stage of the old one to stocked or disposed or salvaged, whatever I want, automatically change the stocked new computer to deployed or whatever else I might need to change it to. And then it even gives me a list of the currently installed software on the old computer. So if this is a faculty member or an employee whose computer, I want to make sure I've got a list of what software they're currently using, so I know what to add or install on the new machine. I've got that list readily available here. It's a very long list in this case. And way down at the bottom, there is this commit button. So once I've made these changes, and I think it does require me to at least copy something for this commit button to become active. Basically, what I'm doing is saving these changes, making these changes to the old and new computer record to swap them out. I can attach a copy of this summary to the current old computer. I can attach a copy of this summary to the new replacement computer. I can also download this summary, but when I click commit, I'm saving that change and formally swapping out the old computer with the new. That's at a high level, the computer replacement extra sits. If you come under settings to the extras tab, this is where you can select which extras you want to add. Check the box. If you don't see extras here at all, you need, after you add your first extra, you've got to refresh the browser window entirely. And then you'll see extras. Underneath it, you'll see any of those that you've installed. You can add a link to these to your dashboard to make it easier to access. And then the hardware replacement extra itself comes in the form of this spreadsheet that you then step through computer by computer group through the replacement process.